This video is entitled, Moving the F-Pawn May Be Hazardous to Your Health. Let's take a look and see why moving the F-Pawn like this could be hazardous to your chess health. First thing to notice is the chessboard is not a symmetrical board. If it was, the king would be in the center and there'd be a queen on each side, and there wouldn't be 8 rows across. There would have to be 9 or some other odd number. So things are very different with the king on the right and the queen on the left. Let's take a look and see what we mean by that. In a lot of queen pawn openings, you'll see that the center pawn can be supported by the C pawn moving 1 or possibly 2 steps. And that's very common and actually very safe. But on the other side, moving up the F pawn is not as safe and not as common. Yes, it can be done, and it can be done very well at the highest levels of chess. But you have to really know what you're doing, and this is a case where a little knowledge can be dangerous. Let's take a look and see what happens in a couple examples. Notice that there's a weakened diagonal this way, which could prevent the king from castling, or he could get a check, and there's another check coming up this way, which of course would be compounded if white foolishly moved up this pawn, and then there'd be total weakness on this diagonal. Let's see a couple examples. One of them is the famous fool's mate. The shortest chess game possible begins with white moving his F-pawn. Black moves his E-pawn 1 step or 2. And after white makes this horrible move, comes queen here, checkmate.
Checkmate.
Interesting, this can only happen to white in this few moves, because white is actually ahead in reverse development, ahead in undevelopment, and he's able to destroy his position faster than black. Let's take a look at another example, which is probably much more likely to happen. White begins like this, and he knows from chess books that this is one of the many good continuations that white can play. This is called the King's Gambit. It is a fine move, but again, a little knowledge can be dangerous. Let's see what happens. White has made 2 moves straight out of the chess book, grandmaster moves. There's an attack on this pawn, and black's reply is a simple developing move, leaving the pawn unprotected. Well, it's a free pawn, and it opens the F file, one of the ideas of the King's Gambit. White captures. This chess game is now over. After this check here,
Check.
white has 2 choices, terrible and worse. On the natural move, advancing the G pawn to block, black has this check, picking up the rook, game over. The only other legal move for white is to move his king 1 step forward, where this move, the queen takes pawn, is checkmate. Again, a little knowledge is dangerous, and only move the F pawn if you really know what you're doing. Certainly not before castling. Let's take a look now at an actual game that I just played. I'm black, and the game began like this. My opponent is rated 1734, not a terrible rating, and you'll see he plays the first few moves quite perfectly. Perfectly fine book move by both players. First opening 2 moves by both players are straight out of the chess book. White's third move, knight c3, straight out of the chess book. Bishop f5, it's in book of sorts. It's called the Shirazi Indian or the Janowski Indian. It's a variation of the Old Indian. And now one of the possible white replies is pawn to f3. This is an actual book move, and the idea is pretty obvious. To show the bishop on f5, it has no business being there. First 4 moves, all in book. Black's idea is that if the pawn thrust does come, instead of moving the bishop out of the way, we'll just throw in a capture first, and then move the bishop out of the way. White's 5th move, d5, trying to take away the possibility of that capture, where he'd have a strong advantage after the move e4. It is one of the book choices, and black replies with e4, taking away that possibility. Okay, first 5 moves straight out of the chess book, and now both players are playing on their own. Captures the pawn. Black captures. This move I don't understand. Maybe the idea was to try to drive the bishop away with a move like this. But in any case,
Check.
after queen h4, there's only one feeble move left.
Checkmate.
And now checkmate. So the first 5 moves are book, and white loses in 3 moves. Again, don't try this at home, folks. Moving the f-pawn is only if you really know what you're doing. I hope you enjoyed the video.